Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's Ideas Sharing webinar. I'm Paul, and I work in the marketing team here at eviivo. And joining me this week, as in every week, is David Weston, Chairman of the B&B Association, and Ian and Alex from the marketing team at eviivo 2 helping me host. And today's webinar is very much continuing the discussion around things we need to all be thinking about and doing now in preparation for our businesses opening as demand starts to return with view to a hopeful reopening in July. Our guests today are Janet Utley, Head of Business Support Transformation at Visit England, Lynn Martin, owner of Dorset House down in Lyme Regis, and Sapphire Steen, Marketing Manager at Wishbox. We'll be talking with all of them a little bit later about various ideas and processes around this concept of how to reopen. Good, and as I mentioned at the start of these webinars every week, they really are an ideas sharing platform for all of you. We know the independent accommodation sector is full of creative and innovative individuals, and this is an opportunity for us all to come together, share those ideas and hopefully inspire each other so we're all ready for when the big reopen happens. And as always, a big thank you to everybody who's been contributing their ideas and questions through the course of the week, dropping those into the events at eviivo.com email address, much appreciated. We do look at all of those and they steer a lot of these webinars that we do to try and make them as relevant as possible. We try and get back to all the questions that we get through as well. If not on the webinar, then directly with you. So in view of that, we'd like to, of course, hear from everyone on the webinar too. If you do have ideas or questions that you want to submit, you can do so during the course of the webinar. At the bottom of the Zoom screen, you'll see a chat icon. Click on that. Alex will be monitoring anything that comes through, and then anything that's relevant and a good general question we can try and answer on the course of today's call. Good stuff. So first up then, it's over to David Weston, CEO of the B&B Association, who works entirely on B&Bs and the independent accommodation sector's behalf with his ear to government, and he has a bit of an update for us.
Hello everyone, and thanks again to eviivo for inviting me to take part in this webinar. It's nice to see so many of you. We, as Paul said, we're the UK Trade Association for B&B and guest house and small hotel owners, who are here to fight your corner and provide information and support to our members. We've been very much involved in trying to lobby for filling up in the gaps of various elements of government support from Westminster government and the Scottish government and in Wales and Northern Ireland too. And the only news since last week's webinar on that is that we've been pushing the Scottish government about B&Bs that don't have a business bank account. A lot of small B&Bs obviously just operate with using a personal bank account, and they've on those grounds have been ruled out of grants so far because it's been a condition to have a business bank account. So we've been pressing on that and giving them facts and figures, giving the Scottish government facts and figures of how many are involved. And they've just announced that there'll be a new tranche of £3 million for those small B&Bs, and applications are open on that from the 15th of June. So that's good. That's another little gap filled. Also, news on support schemes, that the self-employed support scheme, SEISS, there will be a second payment. There'll be next applications in August for a second and final payment, because there's already been one round. Second and final payment, which should be 70% of average 3 months, up to a maximum of £6,570. So those are the sort of new things in the funding, in the sort of funding front. Other than that, we've been working, as Paul said, mainly on the guidance, the safe guidance on how to reopen, on planning for reopening. England has said 4th of July at the earliest, but the 4th of July is a provisional date. We're hoping it's going to be fairly soon confirmed as a firm date. We've been pushing that. And in fact, there was a meeting just an hour before this. I was on another meeting with something called the Visitor Economy Working Group, which is chaired by the Minister of Tourism, Nigel Huddleston. We discussing guidance very much on that call, and saying that we as a sector want that 4th of July date firmed up very quickly. The Northern Ireland, as Paul mentioned, have given a date of 20th of July, but that's a firmer date, so people can take bookings happily for that date. England is provisional 4th of July. Scotland haven't set a date yet, and Wales haven't set a date yet. And in terms of guidance, I've seen draft official government guidance, two separate sets. One's from the business department for visitor economy businesses, that's anybody in the tourism sector basically, and there's another one from the tourism department, DCMS, which is for the accommodation sector specifically. That's official government guidance. They're aiming to get that published on the 13th of June. Whether they meet that date or not, I don't know, but they're aiming on that, and I've seen early drafts of it. It's very heavily biased towards sort of workplace and employer issues. Then there's another set of guidance been produced by UK Hospitality, the trade association for hotels, restaurants, bars, venues. That's much more granular, much more practical and focused on individual businesses. But there's a lot of it because it covers a wide number of business types. We plan to try and make it as simple as possible for B&Bs and guest houses by giving more focused guidance for the smaller properties. The trouble is that the UK hospitality guidance is going to be seen as the sort of sector guidance that will be not officially recognised by the government, but near to that, and it may be recognised very much by Visit Britain, Visit England, and we'll hear a bit more about that from Janet in a minute, perhaps. But so that UK hospitality work, the so-called protocols, are important. We did share an early version at a previous eviivo webinar, and we've also shared them with our members, got lots of comments in. So we probably won't be able to replace that with B&B guidance, but we'll be able to add another layer on top that's just hopefully more user-friendly and more focused on B&Bs and guest houses. So I'm afraid you're going to be fairly bombarded by guidance of different sorts, but what we'll try and do is guide people through it and have a checklist and try and make it as simple as possible. But there is going to be a lot of it coming from government. After all of us waiting for it, not seeing anything, we're going to get, as I say, with buses, three coming on at once. So that's it really. That's my quick update, and happy to take any questions afterwards.
That's great, David. I guess it's great all that information is coming through, and obviously us at eviivo and you guys at the B&B Association will sort of drill and go through that in detail and try and pull out the salient points and get those up and out to everybody, either on the eviivo.com /coronavirus page or on your B&B Association website, David, so at least it's out there and hopefully digestible, because I know what some of these documents can be like. They can be pretty intense. Yeah. So
I had a
yes. Sorry,
I was going to say, David, we have had a question from Tracy at Church House B&B in Kew Stoke near Weston-super-Mare, and sort of following on from you mentioned the extension of the self-catering sort of second payment there, and Tracy said that they've managed to get the £10,000 small business grant fund successfully, but is there any news on the horizon, any likelihood of further payout to that if closures carry on for future months and aren't resolved in July?
I'm afraid probably not, Tracy, to that one. You're one of the lucky ones. I know you won't want to hear that, but you're one of the lucky ones in having had the £10,000, because there's been a lot of B&Bs that still haven't had a single penny of help for various different reasons, and we've been obviously trying to push to fill in all the gaps. Some people have just received the self-employed fund, and many have not got much from that. But no, I'm afraid that there's no sign of there being any further grant for the people who've received the £10,000 grant. And the Treasury, all the messages from the Treasury seem to be that they're going to try and turn the taps off with these things, because they've got these huge commitments of furlough money and everything right through to October. What their view that they take is every business should be able to have accessed one help scheme, and the only purpose of it is to just keep them alive without so the business doesn't fail until they can reopen again. So there'll be a lot of unfairnesses, and there are. Some people have received £10,000, some people have received virtually nothing at all, some a little, but no, I'm afraid there's not going to be another grant of that level.
Yeah, I guess the focus now really on their side as well, with every industry, isn't it? It's getting sort of back up and running as quickly as possible to enable people to start to earn again, really.
Yes, and sorry, I should have perhaps explained for those who weren't there here last week that the principle with this guidance is that each business should do its own risk assessment, COVID-19 risk assessment, rather like the same principle you do for a fire risk assessment, going through every aspect of your business and working out the risks and how to mitigate them. So all this guidance will be to help you do that. So just to explain that point. Yeah.
So it's sort of that ship has sailed slightly in terms of the funding then, we think, and it's now a different focus. I mean, the other thing I just wanted to mention as well is that I do hope that the nations, the opening dates are coordinated sufficiently that visitors know, when they can book B&Bs, rather than having a different date in Scotland and in Wales. And I mean, I know we have the date for Northern Ireland and Ireland, but that kind of makes sense. But I think we certainly want to see that England, Wales and Scotland were all in line. So let's hope that happens.
And we've had a question through from Jenny. She said there's still no grants for council tax paying accommodation in Wales. Do we know if there's anything happening there?
No, sadly, they haven't announced anything yet. We've had the grants. I mean, we had to push for ages for the one in England, and then there was one announced in Scotland. Wales haven't said that yet, and I don't know whether they will or not. We're pushing for that, and we haven't forgotten all our members in Wales or Northern Ireland, indeed, who haven't done that either. So we're keeping the pressure on the Welsh Assembly to announce something, but I don't know how likely it is, unfortunately.
Good stuff. Thanks. Thank you, David. Really some good progress again made, as there is every week. Thank you for all your efforts there, and look forward to seeing those guidelines, hopefully not too far away. Right, so Ian, you're taking the next guest this afternoon.
Yes, indeed. So our first guest today is Janet Utley, who's Head of Business Support Transformation at Visit England. Janet, are you there? I'm not sure if we've got you on video today or...
No video, I'm afraid, but you can hear me.
Okay, which is a shame because we had you on video earlier, and when we spoke the other week, you were on video.
I know. It's technology letting us down. There's too many calls today. I think that's what it is.
We'll just have to make sure everyone's paying attention. And so, Janet, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role at Visit England, and in fact, for anyone that's perhaps not familiar with Visit England, who's listening from the other nations, what your sort of area of responsibility is.
Certainly. I have a background in the attractions sector and have worked with a number of various different attractions, and have worked, this is the second time, my second tenure with Visit England, in fact, returning last year to work very closely for the last year with our destination management organisations and at certain partners like the National Trust and the RHS. And that work has been instrumental really in getting us to the point where, when this hit and this unexpected situation hit, we were able to very quickly get support with the destinations and help them with guiding them through the way forward, so that they could help small businesses. And we had a small fund that we enabled us to keep business support people in post at 57 of our DMOs that were really struggling. So now I have moved on into business support transformation, because we're looking at what we do as an organisation for industry, and how we align what happens across the organisation in a better way, and also pick up with the learnings that we're gaining through the current situation, so that we go forward post-COVID with some positive things that we can take forward, because we do want to try and bring out of this some positives for the sector. So Visit England, as the National Tourist Board, is in with Visit Britain, and Visit Britain's role is to promote Britain internationally. And our core funding from DCMS as an arm's length body is to run international campaigns to promote Britain. Of course, because of the situation that we're in now, it would not be a sensible move to be running an international campaign. So we are now looking at the recovery and running a domestic campaign. And part of that recovery process has been the work that I've been leading on the industry standard. And the industry standard itself, and David has been involved in discussions on this. We've spoken with all industry bodies to find out, would this be helpful? Because we do know that there is a lot of guidance out there, and we didn't really want to be put in a position where, as an ALB, we would be writing guidance ourselves and creating another layer. What we wanted to do was to create something that could help with consumer messaging, and that's really what this is.
I mean, it's certainly something I think we heard mention of it a few weeks ago, and then we've had quite a few questions about it. So there's definitely interest in it. So what is it? Is it sort of like a quality scheme, or how will it work?
No, it's very different to a quality scheme. It's very much, as I say, it's the umbrella of making sure that any operator that comes onto, and it will be online. I should sort of give a little bit of background, because not everybody may know this. Through the consultation process, we were told very clearly, don't burden us with more, actually make this simple, make it a question set, great, but don't give us an overloaded 75 pages worth of questions, which we've listened to. Make it online, because that's easy. We can do that at any point of the day, and that helps us. And also make sure that this is something that works across the whole of the UK if you can. And those discussions are ongoing, and it's very positive at this moment in time. We're working closely with our partners in Visit Scotland, Visit Wales, Tourism Northern Ireland, and also have a discussion open with Fulchers Island, so that we can recognise the fact that consumers know no boundaries, and actually a lot of our visitors don't need to know the boundaries. They just need to know that work is underway to make sure that they can visit with confidence. So the work, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, so it will be something that sort of is a consumer facing standard that they will get reassurance from.
Yes, so it's very much around a mark. We can't call it a kite mark, because to call it a kite mark, it has to be BSI accredited, and we don't have that time on our side. So we are taking the route of it being an industry standard stroke a charter mark. At the moment, its working title is good to go. That may change. It's still going through consumer testing, because we want to make sure that we're getting this right. The process in itself, as an online complete, will be 12 to 20 questions with a drop-down bar that links to a membership body that we're working closely with. So, for example, David and B&B Association is involved in that consultation process and will be involved in that next stage. Now, I will pick up on something that David said just now in relation to UK hospitality. The UK hospitality guidelines is a strong set of guidelines, but as a body, we will not just be recognising one set of guidelines. We will be recognising the guidelines that the industry bodies tell us are the most useful. Because what we want to do is make sure that should anybody go through this process and actually have a wobble where they think, I don't know the answer to that question, or I'm not across that, we will have a call handling system in place to take calls to actually help and give that one-to-one support. So the question set will be linked against the must-dos, like the risk assessment. Do you have a risk assessment in place? Are you aware of what social distancing you should have? Now, at the moment, we know that's 2 meters for England. That may change, and we need to be mindful of that, that if that guidance changes, that we get that communication out to say that's changed. But right now, any business in England has to follow the 2 meters. So it's confusing if we run with something that's for everybody across the UK, because we don't want operators in England to follow guidance that's being given to Scotland. So we're separating that out country-wise so that that's fair and we're following the right Public Health England guidance. And then that would fall down to a certification and use of the mark, which will then link into that main domestic campaign, and that domestic campaign will run. We will go live with this, we hope, in week commencing the 15th, and as David has quite rightly said, that's when DCMS are going to release the high-level guidance. We want it to work alongside that, because we don't want to be in a situation where we go live with something and we're missing a key element, because obviously that's still going through consultation now, which we are very much part of. And then in that week of go live, you go on, you do the questions, you're good to go. This is your last port of call almost, to check that you've got those key elements. You've read a lot of guidance, and it's really easy to miss something because you've fixated on one element of a very large document. This is what we hope will be that final check and balance. But in turn with that, we will give you that mark that you can use, that will have the reassurance of being used in the marketing campaigns. And we will also enable you to have the certification that you can show. Now, robustness of this, well, there will be spot checks, and the spot checks will be carried out by an assessor, but not necessarily an assessor that's coming through the usual route, because this has to go through procurement. This has to be done fairly. The assessment that will take place is not like your full business support assessment. It will be checking the things that are relevant to the guidance for your sector. So for a B&B, it's going to be relevant to what we've agreed with David and with UK Hospitality is the right route to take with this. And so the assessor will check that, yeah.
And so any property owner can go online, go to sort of this portal, answer the questions, and then sort of at the end of that, do they automatically receive something, or is there anything, do they have to wait for someone to approve their application?
If they've said they're a member of a membership body, because being a member of a membership body cuts out 1 or 2 of the, maybe 5 of the questions. We're still working on that now. But if we have someone saying they're a member of a membership organisation, there will be a 24-hour turnaround, because we will check that. Because obviously there's no point in having a membership organisation agreement if actually anybody could tick that box. That would not be the right way. That's not robust for us. So we want to have that check and balance in place.
Yeah, and then once they sort of, that's all okay, then that gives them permission to use the mark on their website and things like that.
Yes, it can be used across all mediums. The team are working on the mark with some a small toolkit. Within that small toolkit will be a range of smaller versions of the mark with things like sanitizer, hand sanitizer, a picture of are you social distancing, and a reminder. And the reason we've done that is the learning we've taken from the outdoors groupings that have gone live, because my conversations have been across the whole of the industry. And the outdoors groupings are telling us, and we all know this because it's in the public domain now, of the bad behaviour that has happened, where the public who have been in lockdown are suddenly out of lockdown and forget that actually if a toilet is locked, they can't use it, and they break the door down, etc., etc. So what can we do with this to help with that reminder of messaging on site? So for a small B&B, if it would help to have those mini roundels around the property, we know that you might not have a huge marketing budget in the same way as, say, a Merlin or a Core Hotels. So actually we wanted to say, well, okay, if you want to use this emblem, can we do something that complements that to help with that repeat messaging? Because I think it's the repeat messaging that's actually absolutely crucial.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned budgets there. Is there a cost for anyone to get the certification?
No, we are absolutely determined as an organisation, and as are the industry bodies we're working with, that we will not seek payment from industry for this. We are absorbing this cost, but we are also obviously covering the cost of the accreditation through additional funds from government, we hope. But we will absorb cost if that's not the case, because we see this as something that the industry have told us they want, and therefore we need to deliver it, and we need to not expect an additional cost. That is something I can absolutely confirm will not be attached to this, even for a spot check.
And is it mandatory, or is it entirely optional for people to sign up?
Entirely optional, nothing mandatory about this. This is supposed to be something that will help. This is something that is to give reassurance. There are three prongs, really. Reassurance to the operator that they've done what they can do in each of the space that they need to be doing their checks. That it's reassurance for locals, because we know in some parts of the country there are some locals that are very, very nervous and see tourism as perhaps something they don't want right now, and they don't want that. And will that opinion change by the 4th of July? We do not know, but we want to be able to say tourism has got its act together, and that we are taking this on board and taking this seriously, and we are working hard to make sure that we're covering those guidelines. And then also the reassuring message to the consumer themselves, and that's through the campaign.
Okay, so I mean, if I'm a property owner and I'm reading through the questions and I sort of feel I can't answer yes to something, that doesn't stop me opening. But I guess what you would want is for people to then look at, well, why can't you answer that question positively, and then address that area.
At that point, there will be a call, there will be a number there for a phone call. So there will be somebody at the end of the phone that could actually say to you and talk through, why can't you answer that? Now, in the first instance, the call handling will be a first rung with the guidance in front of them. And if that can't be dealt with, there will be a 24-hour turnaround where that's passed through to a more expert person in whichever field. Now, we will be using some of the assessors that we do have through our partners in Visit Wales, if they confirm here, that some of those assessors will be helping with those calls. So we're getting that industry expertise. And I should say, if anybody does want to go an assessment route as business support, that is there as a matter of choice. We're not stripping that away at all.
And you also mentioned the consumer campaign. So how will you be promoting it so that consumers know what they're seeing when they see the logo?
So at the moment, that is all work in progress, all under design with the marketing team and the agency working on this. But there are two options. I can't share the main campaign because if I did share that, I would probably be shot, because basically somebody else could steal the idea. So we have to keep that careful until they're ready to go live. But with that main messaging, this will dovetail into that. It has a very similar phrasing at this moment in time. And as I say, it's going through some consumer testing now just to check that is the right way. But it will be through all the usual mechanics in terms of social and online platforms and the usual marketing routes, the usual marketing mix. And I should say that the plan is that will kick in 1.5 to 2 weeks after the go live of the standards, so that we are following very neatly in place.
Okay, excellent. Well, I think we've probably run out of time there, Janet, but thanks very much for the update. Do let us know when, if you tell us where people can sign into it and find more information. More than happy to promote that on our share pages, etc., and to direct people to that. And if
I would say that David Weston will be kept up to date, because David's one of the bodies we're working with, so that will happen. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and we can help spread the news of that. Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks very much, Janet. I guess we might have more questions on that as we go on.
Yeah, I was just going to see if there's any questions that had come through whilst Janet and Ian were talking there. I think it's a great scheme, Janet. I mean, as Ian was saying, the past couple of weeks definitely sort of has come up a few times, consumer confidence and how they're going to know where it's safe to go to and have things been put in place. I think it's going to work really, really well. Alex, anything come through?
Just a couple of people, Mark and John, asking about the membership groups that are included. Obviously, you mentioned B&B Association, but there's others around the country, I presume.
Lots and lots. So UK hospitality, Alva, Balpa, camping and caravanning. I mean, literally every sector. And as I've said before, the collaboration on this has been quite incredible. And that's the thing that for us has been a route to uncovering guidance that might come from one sector that could be useful for another. So we're cross-referencing as we go on that main spreadsheet that we're retaining.
Right, no, really good coordinated approach, and it's going to be really useful when that all kicks in and give consumers the confidence they need to go and visit. So best of luck with all of that, Janet. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Janet.
Good stuff. Okay, so next up, delighted to introduce Lynn Martin, owner of Dorset House down in Lyme Regis on the south coast. Lynn, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear and see you now. I know your camera was playing up earlier today. I don't know, it seems to be a few gremlins with cameras today, isn't there? But no, we can see you now, Lynn. Great. Thanks for joining us today. So maybe if we just sort of kick off a little bit about your property and how you sort of came to run it, perhaps what you did before and when you sort of opened up.
Okay, so we're in Lyme Regis, we're by the sea. We've got a 5-bed B&B and we opened 6 years ago, literally today. So we're celebrating somehow today. We haven't worked out how yet. And I came from a marketing background. I used to work brand marketing for Jaguar, so quite a difference. And Jason worked in the health industry, so he's a tennis coach and worked in tennis, and we worked together in the business, so it's both of us. We've got 5 rooms, and we've got very much a sort of contemporary hippie ethos, I suppose. We're really focused on sustainability. We are really integrated into the local community in terms of food and very much promote outdoors. You know, we take guests wild swimming and we take them on walks, but we try and provide a nice luxury environment when they come back. So, you know, contemporary hippie in that people don't like to go without their comforts nowadays.
Sounds fantastic. And having guests coming back, which is great. I mean, that's a key. I guess now you've established for 5 years and you're getting guests return. It obviously highlights they're enjoying themselves and you're doing a great job down there. With regards to the bookings that you had booked in then, sort of before everything kind of hit with regards to the pandemic, how have you sort of managed those going forward? Have you managed to keep some or had to?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of communication with the guests. We had, ironically, a really good March and April, a lot of bookings. So we contacted them all individually. We started off with that first few weeks and offered them the opportunity to either move their booking or a lot of them, while it was so uncertain, we really didn't know what was going on. We sort of put them into a holding compound where we said, look, we'll keep in touch, and as things develop, we'll work out what we want to do. Obviously, there were some refunds, but thankfully not too many. Most guests opted to stick with us, and a lot of very flexible, just, yeah, stick me in next year and we'll speak then. We did a few gift vouchers so that people who really weren't sure whether they would come back would offer their deposit to someone else, give it to a friend. So we've got a stack of people ready to slot back in as soon as we can. And as the lockdown progressed and went on longer and longer, we got in touch with the next batch of guests, but we've very much kept in touch with them. We've been doing quite a few campaigns and e-newsletters to keep the Dorset House ethos going. So we've been sending through recipes so that they can make a Dorset House breakfast at home. They've been sending us pictures of their breakfasts they've done. And we've had some really good sort of well-wishing from guests, actually. It's been really comforting. It's been really nice. A lot of them phoning us just to check how we're doing and check we're all right, which is really sweet and, you know, keeps you going when you get a bit despondent. So,
absolutely, yeah.
So, yeah, we're just about to get in touch with the next batch of guests to say, okay, we've potentially got some availability in July. Do you want to come? You know, we've got the list of the ones that have been pestering us to know when we're going to open, the sort of hardy souls that I think will be first to test the water. So I think we'll go to them first and see if we can slot them in.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it's so important during this time in terms of keeping in touch with your customers and your guests. And it sounds like you've done a great job with that. If they're coming back to you now and asking you how you're doing and how you are and so on, it's
really nice.
Yeah, obviously you've built up a really good business there, and people want to come back and stay again. And the fact that they've been sort of very mindful of your situation as well as their own, it's good to see. Good. Well, hopefully lots of those guests will be coming back soon. Then with regards to going forward and then starting to open up again, what sort of things have you been doing in the lockdown period, sort of getting ready for that reopen, and perhaps how you've been thinking around things to restructure bits and pieces through your B&B so you can sort of follow the sort of new guidelines and so forth?
So we've used the time to really have a look at a lot of the maintenance jobs that we couldn't do over the winter because the weather was so appalling. It's ironic that we've had this glorious patch of weather now, but a lot of the outdoor jobs have got done. We've refurbished the veranda, which is now looking lovely and will help with social distancing, and that gives us a bit more space. We've painted the outside of the B&B, but just we've moved up into the rooms as well, which is great. We've got 3 kids, so we've filled the place really, and it gives you a chance to look at the rooms with fresh eyes, spot the things that are looking a bit tired that you don't necessarily spot when you're just in cleaning. So lots of filling of cracks and then repainting and that sort of thing, but also a chance to step back a bit and rethink, okay, in this new world, these new guidelines we're going to have to implement, how can we make that nice for the guests, nice for us? How can we use it as an opportunity to sort of improve the guest experience? You know, it doesn't have to be all masks and horrific experiences. You know, what elements can we tweak to make them personal? You know, so we've been walking through each step of the journey to just think about how can we do this while we're waiting for guidelines. We're obviously having to be very open-minded about what we might be required to do. And also we've been trying to overlay that balance with our sustainability ethos. I think one of the things that worries me slightly is this idea we're being sold that everything needs to be plastic wrapped to meet criteria in the new world. So we've been looking at all of those elements where people are very much pushing the plastic and thinking about, okay, is there a better way we can do this, whether it's doubling up so that we can have one set of stuff that's sitting in a holding compound so it's not being touched for a few days, swapping things in rather than plastic wrapping everything. So
yeah, I think it's really important. There's been such great strides made through the industry the last 10 years and people pioneering and that sustainability. It'd be a shame to sort of really lose that, and I guess certain things are going to need to be done, but as much as we can minimize that, the better. I mean, Ian and I have been talking about it this week actually, and maybe we focus on the future webinar about how we can sort of help advise on that. But I smiled to myself there as you were saying you've had your kids sort of testing out the rooms for you as kind of pseudo guests. That's something that Ian, and I saw him smile on the camera, or tries to mention every week.
Good to see, Lynn. Very good.
Yeah, because you're running your properties on a day-to-day basis. You're not seeing everything that the guest is potentially seeing. So looking through it with a fresh pair of eyes, so to speak, enables you to do all those little jobs that will make it an even better experience when they return. So that's great.
Yeah. I mean, I was convinced we had blackout curtains in one of the rooms, and having slept in it now, I know that on a bright sunny day at 5 o'clock in the morning, we need an extra layer. So, things like that. The guests, bless them, have never mentioned that, but certainly that's something to attack.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important, because guests don't mention things like that, and you don't know until you do it, and you get woken up by the birds and stuff like that, and you think everyone's had a lovely night's sleep, and they don't necessarily put it in a TripAdvisor review or whatever. Had a lovely time, but music to my ears. That then fantastic.
You've made Ian's afternoon then.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Lynn, I know you're a really keen cook and chef, and you won Tastiest Breakfast Awards last year for your breakfast. So I know that they're great down there at Dorset House, but that's going to be one of the main areas, I think, and challenges for B&Bs is how to kind of manage that breakfast scenario situation when you've potentially got lots of guests coming together at one time. How have you sort of thought about managing that going forward when we have to sort of adorn to the social distancing and so on?
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting one, because for us, our breakfast was around a big communal table, and it was a real thing for us, quite a USP for us, that guests would often talk about, oh, it's like coming down to a dinner party at breakfast, and they all sit around and they'll often sit there chatting until 11. And obviously we can't do that in the new world. Yeah. So we've been playing around with floor plans to put individual tables in. We can't have a full house in at the same time. We just haven't got the space to do that. So I think we'll have to do an early sitting and a late sitting and ask guests to go along with that. But again, we're trying to look at that as an opportunity. It means we'll have a bit more time. We're not going to have that scenario of 5 rooms walking down at once. So we'll have a bit more time to have a more personal service. A lot of the buffet items that we used to have, there was always a buffet, will now go a la carte. And we've just been thinking about things like, okay, let's provide a generous portion or a small portion so that people can decide how much they want to, whether they want to go large or not. We have a series of different courses, so we can still do that with a la carte. We're just going to have to manage it slightly differently. And you know, the layout is still something we're working on. We keep playing around with moving bits of paper around on floor plans, but you know, we'll get there. We'll make that work. But I think we talked about initially when we open, maybe keeping the numbers low for the first couple of weeks, not going full capacity, so that we can just make sure that that's working, just make sure we're not having any pinch points with people all congregating on the stairs or whatever it may be. So I think we'll have a bit of a ramp up period to just make sure we can nail that and make sure people are still getting the experience that they deserve of their precious time off, you know. I
think that's a really good chat, really good idea, just to sort of almost ease your way into it, work at maybe half capacity initially, check everything that you've put in place does actually work, and then you know you can build that as you sort of go through the summer and get back up to sort of full occupancy, as it were. Great. And then maybe finally, just to sort of finish off, I know you're in a sort of tourist hotspot down there in Lyme Regis, and it's been sort of busy the last couple of weeks with the fantastic weather we've had. The whole idea of sort of balancing, you know, obviously people want visitors to return and also people to start to come and visit again, but then you know the population of Lyme Regis is also keen to make sure that they're not being swamped and overpowered by an influx of new people for obvious reasons. How is sort of thinking in the town sort of around that sort of currently?
At the moment it's quite mixed. I think we're not getting quite the kind of irateness that we're seeing further down in Cornwall, but certainly there are a lot of people breaking the rules. There are lots of Airbnbs letting out their properties already, and day trippers like you wouldn't believe. I'm hoping that by the time we open, because we're officially open, that element of anger at people breaking the rules will have dissipated.
Sure.
And also, as we open, hopefully a lot of other businesses are also opening in terms of restaurants, pubs, so the people that are currently congregating on the beaches will be a little more dissipated. At the moment, tensions are running a little bit high in town, I must say, but you know, today's rain might help with that.
I'm sure it will. Yeah, but just something for you know to be mindful of, isn't it, as you sort of start to continue and sort of get guests in as well, highlighting to, as well as your guests, what you're doing to be safe to the local community as well is really important. And I know you've been helping out with the local community too, haven't you, in sort of the quiet time with regards the sort of food bank you've been providing for?
Yeah, so I've been involved in a really lovely project for the school kids that would normally have free school meals, who are obviously now at home, so aren't necessarily getting those meals. should in theory get vouchers but might not necessarily be using those vouchers appropriately. We've been cooking meals together with the chefs from a couple of the restaurants in town, and there's a process to get those distributed to the kids that are currently at home, and also some extras for people who are maybe self-isolating that can't get out. But we try and create sort of junk food that we've hidden vegetables in, and so it's nice in that it's a creative outlet. You know, we're having to think each week about how can we do something that kids are going to love but is also healthy, and we're using our contacts within the food community to get produce in. You know, there's real support in the community. We've had some amazing donations from local businesses who've, you know, oh, here's £500 to go and sort things out. So it's really made the community pull together. It's been really lovely. Yeah.
It's fantastic. It's great to hear. And yeah, thank you so much, Lynn, for coming on today and sharing all those thoughts and ideas. Wish you all the best of luck in sort of ramping up to reopen. Yeah, and hopefully we'll all be up to full speed again soon. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Cheers, Lynn. Very good. Alex, any questions before we sort of move on to the final guest? Time's running quick today, so
yeah, just a quick one. Mark and Anthony are both asking about restrictions between when a guest stays. So if you're leaving 24 hours between stays, I don't think we have any official guidelines on it, but maybe David or Lynn, if you've anything to say on it.
Yeah, David might have more. I don't think there's any more development since we met a couple of weeks ago, is there, David?
The official government guidance won't be that detailed. The UK hospitality work that's been done doesn't recommend leaving any gap between guests normally. There's a recommendation, obviously, if you have somebody with symptoms, that there's a 72-hour gap. But it will be obviously a lot more involved in terms of cleaning regimes and cleaning the rooms, so than previously. So I suppose that's a slightly open question as to looking at the guidance when it's finally published, and looking at how much detail there is, how much work there is in terms of cleaning a room to the COVID-19 standard. But in theory, you should be able to do it just back to back and not have to leave an extra day between bookings. But that's going to be, one to look and manage, because the cleaning will be a bigger job than before, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Thanks, David. Thanks, Alex. Okay, so moving on then to our final guest today, and we're now going to look with regards to the concept of sort of managing guests contactlessly, with elements likely to be requiring that in the new norm with regards to travel, certainly in the near future. So this idea of putting an arm around your guests, but perhaps staying at arm's length from them, so to speak. So to talk to us a little bit about that, delighted to introduce Sapphire from Wishbox, who are one of new partners with eviivo, to tell us a bit more about the thinking around processes about how you can do that. Sapphire, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, Sapphire. How are you? All right?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you.
Good. So maybe just tell us a little bit about Wishbox and how, some of the features of it will help this concept of sort of managing guests remotely, so to speak.
Sure. So Wishbox is a guest experience platform. We're a host ourselves, so we are well aware of the pain points. Even before the recent COVID-19, that host experience with the guest interaction. And basically what we do, we integrate to the PMS, have integration with eviivo, and we pull the rental and reservation data, and that way we're able to communicate with guests in a perfectly timed way. And since hosts offer so much more than a bed, offer an experience, we allow hosts to bring that experience online and essentially to digitize it. And basically taking the perfect guest experience that every host would want to offer and customize it. So it's extremely relevant for these times, and I'll talk specifically about tools that are relevant for now, because hosts would need to maintain certain security. They would need to improve communication, and also this is something we're seeing a lot of hosts approaching us about, becoming more efficient. So offering more services, and maybe even collaborating with local suppliers to also generate more revenue from every guest, and in a sense, it also allows hosts to offer a more personalized experience. So it's we also allow communicating through multiple platforms. The tools that I'll mention, which are recommended for every host to offer, allow hosts to communicate with guests through email, SMS, and WhatsApp, even before arrival, in a scheduled way, so that it doesn't require the same time, and you can set it up once the perfect way. Use different personalizations, addressing the guest in their first name and mentioning different things that are specifically relevant to them, so it feels very personal and warm, and obviously including your touch to it. The first thing that I think is most relevant for now is the online check-in, basically allowing a personal way for guests to check in without exchanging anything from hand to hand. You don't have to meet them. Each host chooses to use different features. I'll share quickly something on my screen, just so you can see. There's a few screenshots, and sometimes it helps to visualize it. So, sorry?
Great.
So this is just a few screens showing the online check-in. Like I said, you can see the self check-in, and there's a lot of different things you can do to just eliminate the risk of unnecessary physical contact. And another thing is also eliminating the queues, or anything that would cause a crowd. So document scans, you can ask us to scan passports in advance, terms and conditions, payment, it's just a few of the options you can do to automate the entire process. And it's also a nice experience for guests that they have the option to just come, and the bureaucracy is over with. As part of the online check-in, I'll just mention very quickly that it is very important to also communicate the branding, because each place has its own unique aspects, and it is something that we personally completely allow. Another thing is having everything in the guest's native language to kind of minimize miscommunications, which is something that is also very important. And having just a way to check in online without needing to download anything, without needing to register, making it as easy as possible, is also very important when offering an online check-in. So these are the things that should be noticed. And then another important part of the online check-in is using that communication. You're already communicating with a guest before they arrive, so the perfect thing would be to utilize that into offering relevant services. And it doesn't matter if it's a domestic crowd or an international crowd. There's different things that can really elevate the guest experience, and just I'll give a couple of examples. So one of them is an early check-in. A lot of times guests would want the opportunity they arrive earlier, and they would like the opportunity to enter the room earlier. So specifically, one feature which is my favorite is the smart early check-in, just because systems would have the availability, would have the option to know whether the room was available the night before, and if guests can check in early or not. So you can offer that, with pay to guests, and it's a win-win situation. You would generate more revenue from that reservation, and again, just become more efficient. And at the same time, the guests would have, the check-in time that they want, that is most convenient for them. Similarly, we also have the option to offer transportation and other services, and also a room upgrade or rental upgrade, which is also very important. A lot of guests appreciate having a lot of space for themselves. So if there's, a bigger space that is available, just having the option to bringing it up and offering this to the guest before they arrive is a great way to also, just generate more revenue and become more efficient. So
yeah, I think adding those, just to interrupt, adding those sort of ways to upgrade or pay for extras using the app doesn't necessarily need any sort of personal interaction, which is great because it helps with the whole distancing. But then enabling a business to kind of get more money from a guest that they've already got coming in is super important. Certainly for this season, that might be a bit truncated. It enables hopefully to get more money out of that guest, especially if a room upgrade's available, for example.
Yeah, that's a very important part of it. Obviously, before arrival and throughout the stay, having all the information available to the guest in a digital way. I mean, even before opening, just having, the cleaning policy and all that information detailed to guests so that they feel as secure as possible. I'm sure that was brought up several times here. So, it's also very important to add this to every aspect of the communication and just having the reassurance, because no one really wants to be worried on their vacation.
It's a really, really good shout. So the things like the new Visit England scheme, if they have that accreditation, then they can effectively be put in this communication to, again, make feel guests happy and confident about coming to stay. Really good point.
Yeah, and another big step of the guest journey that would be helpful to digitize at the moment is during the stay. Also, we have a guest app that you don't need to download it, so it's very easy to access. So you can potentially just schedule it in a message to guests. Guests can very easily access it, and it would contain, all the updated information, even about the area, but also about the rental. A lot of information that's online right now isn't very relevant for the time, so it would give the opportunity for the host to update everything. And more importantly, no one wants to touch, pamphlets or anything in the room right now. So just having the option to have everything updated online, and you can customize it, per rental with, again, personalized details. So it has the feeling of, just a personal touch. But it's also a very important aspect, of hosting at the moment. And also, people like having things, a quick access on their phone. So
yeah, I think that's a great shout. The books that you find in the rooms, obviously everybody sort of goes through them, and one of the things we've learned over the last couple of weeks is to try and declutter rooms where possible, get rid of scatter cushions and anything that's kind of potentially superfluous. So if that can be digitalized and also communicated to guests before they arrive, then that's a big win, I think, isn't it, in terms of that communication.
Yeah, it definitely is. Also, just having the ability to, have somewhere to put information that guests would access, and you can, potentially schedule. Okay, once they're in this, they would receive a message like, "Hey, we have these and these recommendations," and also something that Lynn mentioned, which I think is extremely relevant, different services that you already offer but need to kind of have the opportunity to reorganize. One of the things you are able to say, hey, like, let's click this link and just schedule when you would have breakfast. And so you're able to have guests very easily they know exactly how things are going to work, and the ability to tell guests that you can offer these tools are also very important. So that's a big part of the guest app, and why it's even more important than ever to have the ability to have this like clever and smart communication with guests.
Absolutely, Sapphire. No, that's great. Thank you so much for coming on and talking us through those key points. I think really now, if elements of stay can be done contactlessly, we should be looking to do that. It's going to make that idea of keeping social distance that will be in the guidelines. It will help businesses do that, and also it will help guests feel a bit more safer maybe as well, if they have that option to check in remotely and also order things remotely or upgrade remotely. I think that's going to be a really powerful tool. And so working with you guys going forward, it really highlights the partnerships that eviivo are now trying to put in place. So complementary tech products that are experts in their field to integrate with eviivo suites and obviously make it a more powerful tool for people to use it in the future. And it just so happens that now, obviously, it's even more powerful, more important, perhaps, in the current set of circumstances that we all find ourselves in. So, thank you so much for coming on today, Sapphire. That's really, 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 really interesting information.
Sure, my pleasure.
Good stuff. Okay, before we go then, Alex, I just noticed we've ticked over to 5. So, just wanted to see if there was any questions that we can cover off before sort of wrapping things up.
A couple of questions for Wishbox, but I can get to back to them afterwards. I'll speak to Sapphire.
Okay, perfect. Good. All right. Well, everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. I should star a few things just before we head off. We're still running the Holidays for Heroes initiative, where we're looking to raise money for NHS staff and key workers to send them away on a holiday, and much well-deserved holiday break into B&Bs and guest houses throughout the UK, using all the money that we raise through the crowdfunder page. In order to do that, Alex might be able to pop that up on the chat now. If you indeed want to contribute to that, that'd be most welcome. Also, just need to, of course, thank our guests who we've had on today. So David, of course, and also to Lynn and Jeanette and Sapphire as well. Thank you so much for your time and coming on today. Really useful chat. And these things seem to go quicker and quicker each week, don't they, with all the information we try and pack in. But hopefully everybody on the calls found it really useful. And thank you to everybody that's joined today. We have really good numbers today, which is great. Hopefully you found it useful. Should just star that we have a masterclass for eviivo customers happening tomorrow, another webinar at 4. That will be about the 5 key areas that we always get customer queries on, to kind of address some of those. So maybe worth looking at that. Opportunity to ask questions around that as well. So that's happening at 4 tomorrow afternoon, the masterclass webinar. Email will have come around, and there'll be a reminder coming around tomorrow as well if you want to join in there. And that's, I think, pretty much me. Should just also again highlight the events at eviivo.com email address. If you do have ideas or questions that we haven't covered today, please drop a line to that. We can try and pick it up either directly or in future webinars going forward next week. And I think that's me. So thanks again, everybody, for coming on today. Much appreciated. Look after each other, and here's hoping that reopening is not too far away. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.